Sue Hokana is our guest speaker this evening. She has a master's degree in public health with specialization in community organizations, just like Obama. She's qualified to be president. She studied immigration policy for the past 20 years, and she's often worked with the staff of Numbers USA and also the Center for Immigration Studies in Washington, D.C. on projects dealing with a variety of immigration policy. Her specialization is translating complex research data into easily understandable concepts and supporting immigration policies and community action. And just as a side note, we're going to have Stephen Steinlight, I think July 20th, as our guest speaker on the hardcore illegal immigration issues and what Obama's up to and so forth. And he is with the Center for Immigration Studies in Washington, D.C. So he's going to be out here on the West Coast. Right now, let's welcome Sue as our guest speaker. Sue.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Sutter Tea Party. I've been going around to a very, let me see, about 10 or 12 different tea parties in the region, and have been having lots of fun talking about my passion, which is immigration. Now, how many people do you know have a passion for this enough to study it? It's a very nerdy, strange sort of hobby I've had for years, and my husband thinks I'm a little nuts. And I do work with Numbers USA and the Center for Immigration Studies. No, I don't get paid. I wish I did. And I think I'm about the only lay speaker on immigration in the country, I think. I don't know. If you hear of another one, please let me know. But so far, I think I'm the only one. So anyway, I am talking about radical transformation and demographic changes in our country. And so I'm going to start off here with showing you. We are on a train going over the cliff. I have a theme tonight. It's a nation of citizens. I am not going to use, thank you for dimming the lights. Can everyone see this? If you can't, you have to come up and move up in the seats a little bit. Nation of citizens. You have probably heard nation of immigrants your whole life. That is a very nostalgic look back on our history. And what I'm trying to do is say, we are citizens in this country. We have rights and we have responsibilities. And we have to act like citizens. Not only for ourselves, but our future generations, our descendants. So I am not going to refer to nation of immigrants. We are a nation of citizens. And as a sovereign nation, we have the right and responsibility to limit immigration to preserve the American dream for future generations of American citizens. And when I came in this afternoon, late this afternoon, I saw some young people. I especially keep you in mind. Don't be an immigration blind cat. What is that? As long as it's legal, it's fine. That's what immigration blind cats say. And I thought of this when I developed this presentation a few months ago because I had a 23-year-old kitty. She was blind, and we knew better than put her outside the door because what happens when you have a blind cat outside and you have traffic go by? You get what my husband calls a squiddy. So, you're going to get run over in terms of political power if we continue with mass legal immigration in this country. And I'm going to focus mostly on legal immigration because we have all, I bet half the audience here could come up here and talk coherently very well for at least 5 or 10 minutes on illegal immigration, right? Y'all know a lot about illegal immigration. But what I find in going to the various tea parties, and I was a citizen journalist for the National Tea Party for a little while, and I went to a bunch of different tea parties, and I would talk to people about immigration, And it was always illegal, illegal, illegal. Okay, you guys, you have your PhDs practically in illegal. But what you usually don't know a lot about is the legal side. And it's like twins. When you have twins, you always have the bigger twin, right? So the legal side is the bigger twin, much bigger twin. Outline for tonight, I'm going to briefly review history of immigration, at least from 1870. And it's all about the numbers, numbers, numbers. Two critical impacts are on families and conservatism, and a winning populist approach on reducing immigration. So, by the way, this presentation was approved by the technical staff of Numbers USA and the Center for Immigration Studies. So they've all checked this all out, so it should be very accurate. How many of you have heard of Numbers USA before? Not too bad, not too bad. About 6 of you. Usually I get like one lonely person in the back. Anyway, the average immigrant admissions by historical period here is between, the Great Wave was between 1880, sometimes they put it 1870s to 1920, 1922, about 40 years. We had averaged about 600,000 per year. Okay, so around 1920, we had a bunch of World War I vets coming back, right? You know, and we had communities that were getting quite crowded on the East Coast with all these new immigrants coming over for the past 40 years. And there was a lot of strife between immigrant groups, between the native-born Americans and immigrant groups. And so there was a lot of protest, even in the streets. And so what happened was around 1922, there was a series of laws between 1922 and 1927 on shutting down, basically, legal immigration. So, and part of that was racist-driven, but a lot of that was due to wage competition and job competition between immigrants and native-born Americans. So this is nothing new. What happened in 1920, 1922, or 1915 is the same as what's happening now, 100 years later. Between 1965 and 2013, though, we entered the giant wave, and that's my term. And giant wave is 760,000 per year. We're right now around 1 million per year. So we're at historically high levels. We're at in the longest, highest period of immigration in our nation's history. And it comes about right when we have a lot of crowded schools, overcrowded schools. People talk about traffic, talk about water resources. Well, if you increase your population significantly, you will have water problems with or without a drought. Okay, the benefits of Great Pause, though, in 1920, 1965, were that it improved worker wages, people got jobs, except, of course, in the Great Depression. You had a long-delayed rise in the black middle class. They were basically discouraged from coming out of the South during that Great Wave. So when we went down into the Great Pause, the blacks started rising out of the South, going north and into the industrial centers, and started working in those factory jobs and working side by side with whites. So it was the first natural integration between blacks and whites. Women started entering the workforce en masse, especially later during World War II. Passage of much-needed labor laws, you know, like 40-hour work week, things that we take for granted these days, child labor laws. And there was much better immigrant assimilation because what you had was that they were encouraged to go out and go west or go north and get out of those ethnic enclaves. But you have to ask, how well did mass immigration work out for our Native Americans? Not too well. Demography is destiny is a famous phrase used by demographers. And here is a quote from a Center for Immigration Studies. They just came out with this. looking at our immigrant population, how it's supposed to be growing. It's projected to grow at 4 times faster than the native-born population in the coming decades if we maintain the present high levels of immigration. 4 times higher. So your descendants are going to be a very small minority in this country if we continue the mass immigration. And when you talk about small minorities, you're talking about political powerlessness. We have to recognize that it's not your grandfather's country anymore. Today, the United States is the 3rd most populous nation in the world. It has the most cultural and linguistic diversity. You can see that, especially about Los Angeles. They have something like over 120 languages spoken in the LA schools. It's amazing if they get any education done there. Yeah. It's also a 21st century high-tech nation with lots of automation. When you talk about automation, computer stuff, you need an educated workforce. So here we have all this immigration coming in, both legal and illegal. It's overcrowding the schools. We're not getting our children educated. But also, a lot of those that are coming in, legal, do not have more than 7th or 8th grade education. And then we have such diversity though in our immigrants that come in. They come in totally illiterate all the way to postgraduate, PhD and all that stuff. So we have the full gamut. So I have to be somewhat careful in not stereotyping too much, but far too many come in with very low levels of education, less than a high school education. That's because 60% of the legal immigrants that come in due to their family relationships, not because they have any education or skills that are appropriate to a 21st century country. And we're also a prime target for global Islamic terrorism, like we've never been before, well, almost never been before in our history. A great Democrat, when there were great Democrats, was Representative Barbara Jordan of Texas, and we lost her in 1996. But she was the chairwoman of the Bipartisan U.S. Commission on Immigration Reform back in 1994, when we had genuine bipartisan work and genuine patriotic Democrats. And their conclusion was, in that report that they issued to Congress, we disagree with those who would label efforts to control immigration as being inherently anti-immigrant. Rather, it is both a right and a responsibility of a democratic society to manage immigration so that it serves the national interest. So, can you imagine this? The goals of the 21st century immigration policy. We could write our own policies for what it would be. These would be 3 good ones. It should serve the broad economic needs of American citizens, not special interests, right? Not for votes, not for votes or cheap labor. It should prevent extreme workforce imbalances, not extended family reunification, not bringing in grandma or grandpa or your 3rd cousin once removed, or whatever that is. I never could get those things. That you've never even met before. No, it should be a nuclear family. That's the parents and minor children. And it should also protect the public from criminal, terrorist, and public health risks. We've gotten lots of reminders about that recently. We're doing about as good at screening legal immigrants these days, as we are almost handling the illegal immigration in this country. I mean, it's very poorly monitored as far as health and ability to be self-sufficient. So let's look at some of the numbers. Numbers. Crazyfornia. It dances all over the place here. Over 98% of our population growth in California is due to immigration. and that's both legal and illegal, and that's immigrants and births to immigrants. We receive about 38% of the nation's immigrants. You know why, don't you? Besides our great climate. Very generous welfare system. Is that what you guys are saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We have a similar population density as China, and we have a similar growth rate as India. So when you talk about overcrowded schools and the projections for the road congestion and all that, it's going sky high. We have an enormous immigrant population growth in this country. Right now we have about 41 million immigrants, legal, illegal, in 2013 at least. Quadruple that from 1970. It is skyrocketing. 1 in 8 U.S. residents now is foreign-born. That's 13%. And this is startling in the new information here. In the next 10 years, we will admit the equivalent of another Dallas, St. Louis, Denver, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Atlanta combined.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Are you getting this feeling about the magnitude and the speed here? Okay. And by 2023, which is basically just around the corner, the highest percentage of foreign-born in our nation's history will achieve that. I don't know if it's much of an achievement. Okay, what's a palooza? Anybody know what a palooza? Anyone old enough to know what a palooza is? Okay, well, it's from the 100 years ago. It's a big, wild party. Okay, we have a visa palooza going on. So we have the green card, the permanent resident card, and then we also have visas, which are temporary entry. It's supposed to be temporary, but as Mark Krikorian says at the Center for Immigration Studies, is that there's nothing more permanent than a temporary worker in the United States, whether it's a guest worker or it's a high-tech worker or whatever. They come in on a visa, they're likely to stay here, whether legally or illegally. We have, just to give you an idea of the magnitude of entries into this country, first we issue about 10 million non-immigrant visas per year. This was for 2014. And that's business and tourists. People just coming, for short stays, get their business or go see. Yeah, terrorists, okay, yeah, that could be. But there's 173 million non-immigrant admissions. So a lot of those 10 million that get their visas are along the Mexico border, and they come in and out, in and out, in and out, okay, almost every single day, maybe more than once a day, okay? So so that's a lot of activity, just to give you the volume that's happening there. But what I'm more concerned about, in a way, is the 700,000 per year non-immigrant resident visas. And they've found that almost 40% of those are overstay their visas and then become illegal here, because we don't have any visa entry-exit system in this country. So they know they're not going to be caught. Secret deals and shady operations. Center for Immigration Studies just this year testified before Congress, and they reported, initially they reported 5 million, then they revised their numbers. There was 7 million shadow worker permits issued since 2009 by the Obama administration, and which was never authorized by Congress. Just executive thing. If you're illegal, we'll give you a worker permit. Federal encouragement of unaccompanied minors and their families, dispersing them all over the country, and not ever telling Mexico not to allow these buses to come through or these children to come through their country. So there was collusion between the Mexican government and ours on that. And then millions, we expect potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions more in visas if the TPA, all of you have heard of TPA and TPP, the trade deals being negotiated. I see a lot of nodding there, okay. There's provisions in there, there's 10 pages of secret. It's been leaked by WikiLeaks. A whole chapter in that deal on changing our immigration policies in this country. So through this trade deal. So when you hear from your representative that, oh no, we passed this bill, HR 644, that guarantees we're not going to make any immigration changes through these trade bills, it's all malarkey, because what's in that trade bill will overturn or whatever. They'll just ignore HR 644. And of course, through Obama regulations and executive orders, and you all know about those. So let's go on and look at two critical impacts: American families, especially workers, and conservative political power. The media and the policymakers focus always, oh my God, you hear constantly about the immigrants, what they need, their experiences, etc. And what the employers need. You know, they need more skilled labor, which is all baloney, or more farm workers or whatever. Where's our needs being addressed? Our needs. Huh? Yeah. What are we? We're 200, let's say the native-born Americans, what is it, 275 million or so of us? We're completely ignored. What are we, ghosts? They ignore us. We have to foot the bills. The workers also suffer through losing their jobs, or they have to accept lower pay. Crime, epidemic, terrorist risks that we are subjected to. Long waits in hospital emergency rooms, overcrowded failing schools, and schools fail for a lot of reasons, but one of them in certain areas is because they're overcrowded. So where's the compassion for us? And this is what immigration is supposed to serve: our needs. Our needs. Okay, mass immigration bust is wiping out the American worker. It strongly drives poverty and income inequality, because you're importing poverty in large respect, because remember, 60% come in due to family connections, not because they have any education or skills. Unemployment strongly drives unemployment, especially for native-born Americans. Wage suppression, depressions, some of the experts use. Welfare costs significantly. Immigrant families with at least one child have 50% higher chance of being on welfare than a native-born person. Infrastructure costs, like building schools, roads, the population surging. I kind of cringe every time I hear the governor or even our Republican representatives saying we need to build more dams, we need to have, that special canal, Delta Canal, and the bullet train, and all this extremely expensive infrastructure. You have to remember, 98% of our growth is from abroad. So we're paying for it for those that come into this country, basically. Social Security insolvency. Do not expect immigration to pay for your Social Security. Again, due to the low education level of a large percentage of our legal and, of course, illegal immigrants, they never even put in enough to pay for their own Social Security. So, let alone try to pay for yours. If we were smart, or at least smarter like Canada and Australia, they have certain standards, education and skills for their immigrants. So when they come in, they are able to invest into their own Social Security, their version of Social Security, and it's a benefit to it. Right now, our immigrants are largely draining and putting Social Security at risk rather than aiding it. And of course, it drives the Democrat voter rolls. Labor participation rate slips to a 36-year low. We have 58 million working-age native-born Americans who are unemployed, and many have given up. Now, I'm sure, even Rush Limbaugh uses this term, and I cringe every time. The 92 million figure, most of you have heard about 92 million unemployed? Okay. That includes the institutionalized, those in prison, those that are over 65 years old, or under 16. It's really a bogus number. So I use a much more accurate number of 58 million. It's not as grandiose or enticing, but it's the accurate one. But still, tens of millions of Americans are unemployed. Okay? We're adding well over 1 million to the labor pool each year, not only from foreign labor, visas and legal and illegal, but also our young people just growing up and getting out of high school. And for every new job created, though, 2 immigrants are added. So when you have let's say the Republicans saying, we have to create more jobs, more jobs, more jobs, well, they're bringing in twice as many immigrants as can fill those jobs. So, that saying, when you're in a hole, stop digging? That's how we are with legal immigration. Stop digging. Stop bringing in so many, and let's have native-born Americans, get them back to work. And the worst hit of all are youth, young people, inner-city blacks, and Latinos, and new immigrants. Because you bring in these new people from abroad, okay? If they're lucky, they get a job, okay? And then the very next year, you bring in another group, and another group, and another group. You're constantly overwhelming the labor pool. It's not fair to our immigrants to do that. Is the American dream disappearing?
Yes.
For everyone but native-born, maybe for everyone but native-born Americans. From 2000 to 2014, that's a long period, 14 years, 2/3 of the growth in the working population were native-born Americans. That's what you expect, okay? Yet 100% of the net employment growth since 2000 for the ages 60 and 65 went to the foreign-born. The jobs are going to the foreign-born. Now, I'm sure...
They're going to Disneyland.
They're going... Yeah, right, Disneyland. What a great role model Disneyland is, right? You've all heard about how, they're firing their workers and hiring... what is it? I think it's H-1B or the L-1 program. Yeah, and having them train the foreign workers. But anyway... The jobs are going to the foreign-born. And that doesn't mean that a lot of us get new jobs. It's just that if you look at it throughout the whole country, the net big picture, far more jobs are going to foreign-born than the native-born. And are we working for peanuts? For decades now. Remember, we've been on this route of high levels of legal immigration since... probably around 1970 it started really ramping up, but technically it started in 1965. For decades now, we've been expanding the working poor class out of middle class, okay? Because we're importing so much poor. The annual wage loss is $1,800 per year for low skill and $2,600 for high skill workers, and that's Dr. Borjas out of Harvard, and that's an older study, 2004, just to show you it's been going on for a long time. So whether you're low skill or high skill, your jobs are being suppressed, held down. And a recent study in 2012 by Dr. Borjas, by the way, is an excellent example of an immigrant to this country. He's from Cuba, and he worked his way through school, and he has a PhD, and he's one of the top labor economists in this country. Anyway, workers lose about $500 billion per year in reduced wages due to all this foreign labor coming in, keeping the wages down. $500 billion on the T. So we're working for peanuts. So when the Democrats are yelling, we need minimum wage increase, we know that you do that, and what happens? Typically, you go from $7 per hour to $15 an hour. Of course, the employers are going to cut jobs, right? Or automate, like McDonald's threatening to do. But what I'm suggesting here is, hey, there's a different way to do it, a softer, easier way. That's coming up though. Eagle Forum report. Now, if you're not depressed completely, I have something more to tell you. How mass legal immigration dooms a conservative Republican Party. Fast-growing Latino and Asian immigrant groups are overwhelmingly thoroughly liberal, socially and economically and fiscally. They're leery of capitalism. They love big government with generous services. And they often favor international law over the U.S. Constitution. And history suggests that they will remain so for generations, low assimilation. They quote, I believe, the Pew Hispanic Center that says up to 3 generations later, Latinos often do not change their political affiliation, okay, or their educational level. So that's very of deep concern, because we want them to be self-sufficient, right? And that's not happening, especially in the Latino. The Asians do better. One group of immigrants that do fantastic here are the Indians. I think a huge percentage of them are, I hate to say, I think it's something like 80% or something like that come in with a college degree, at least one. I mean, and they do fantastic here. And that, you know, but it's like 10 times more PhDs come out of our Indian immigrants than from our Mexican. Yet we have far more Mexican. Key conclusion from that immigration report: there is no issue more important for conservatives than reducing the future number of legal immigrants allowed into the country each year. Otherwise, legal immigration will continue to add millions of liberal voters every decade, making it extremely unlikely that conservatives will be successful on all the issues they care about. Okay, well, I told you I was going to depress you a little bit, but I do have some encouragement at the end, believe me. Oh, Ann Coulter has a best-selling book out. I have a copy right here, Adios, America. And the left's plan to turn our country into a third world hellhole. It's second on the New York Times bestseller list. And I think that's very encouraging. People are, you know, waking up maybe finally. And on the book cover it says, as Ann points out, if we cave to the Democrats' scheme to bring in 30 million new liberal voters, we will lose on everything else too, from the economy to social issues to foreign policy to constitutionalism to the very identity of our nation. So that's very consistent with the research from the Eagle Forum. So it's not only the numbers and the values that they bring, but we also should touch on assimilation, or the lack thereof. More and more is proud to be un-American is more the theme. Thanks to our government, including foreign government consulates that promote this idea, media, ethnic and political activists, La Raza, of course, but that's not the only one, imply that it's bigoted to ask people to learn English and interact with the larger society. We have everything in multilingual services and signage to, you know, and that tends to discourage people from learning English. And learning English and getting educated are the 2 best things immigrants can do to become self-sufficient in our society. Those 2 things, learn English and become educated. But we have a poor, overwhelmed education system, and often they have anti-American bias. And also, something that's not thought of a lot of times, we have very large insular ethnic communities where, you know, everything's in a foreign language, and you have like one-stop shopping for welfare services, for you know, sending your money back to your home country, and it's very insular. And the problem is that fights integration. We want to have more integration, because the more integration there is, the more that we have a united states, not pulling us apart constantly and balkanizing us. So, high numbers and low assimilation, I call it our national brain transplant. And perfect equation for the most profound social, cultural, and political transformation. Here's our Joe Biden offering his brain to us. Take this. I'm not using it. So we need some immigration. Every so often we need a little immigration, that little blood transfusion, or, if I'm using a body analogy, you need a little knee replacement. Our body politic's 200 and some years old, so we need a little replacement. But when you start going to the high levels with the low assimilation, that's equivalent to a total brain transplant for the country. So what would be a winning populist approach on reducing immigration? First thing, polling data is really strongly in our favor. Majorities of all ethnicities prefer lower immigration, especially illegal. They're just now starting to do, past few years, some polling on legal immigration. It's not as high in our favor as the illegal, but all the ethnicities tend to support lower immigration. No amnesty, pro-enforcement. Jobs and better wages rate much higher priority than bringing in grandma, okay? So people, those bread and butter issues, whether you're immigrant or native born, is what, really comes through in the polling. And I'm suggesting here that if we had less immigrant competition, it would be a smarter alternative to the popular minimum wage increases that's sweeping across the country, wherever it goes. Different communities are just pushing for these very destructive minimum wage increases. Why don't we just start tapering down on our legal immigration? Because that would naturally and slowly let our wages increase and not be so abrupt as minimum wage increase. Stop the Republican Party from driving off the demographic cliff, and instead of Democrat light, open borders and amnesty, let's develop a confident and compelling worker message, populist worker message. Pro-immigrant, we want our immigrants to be successful here. We certainly want them to be self-sufficient, right? Pro-American workers seeking the American dream through less future immigrant competition here. Okay, and then vigorous outreach to ethnic and immigrant communities, which we're not doing. The Democrats are doing great. Almost every time I talk to a Tea Party group, someone brings up the thing that when there's a swearing-in ceremony for new citizens, the Democrats are always there signing them up. And where are the Republicans? Yeah. Okay. Blue Collar Conservatives is a book out by Rick Santorum last year, and he was written up wooing the working class, and he had a great quote in there in this article on his book. I have his book, I've read it. Doesn't mention immigration, but he sure is doing a fantastic job integrating it into his campaign speeches for president. But anyway, here's a great quote from him. The way for Republicans to win votes of minorities is not to outpander the Democrats, but simply to appeal to them as working Americans who want to take part in the American dream, a dream that shouldn't be the exclusive property of Ivy Leaguers and investment bankers. So getting back to some populism there. Rick Santorum gave an excellent speech in Ames, Iowa back in August in 2014 and on immigration, where he calls for less legal and illegal immigration. And that is one of the reasons why he has received an A rating from Numbers USA, the only presidential candidate to have an A rating. The only one that comes close, and it's really not close, is Walker from Wisconsin, Scott Walker. and he gets a B-, and he might be dropping in that evaluation because he does support the trade packs. So we'll see how Numbers USA scores Scott Walker. But Rick Santorum is awesome. He models perfectly the message. He does it so skillfully that I'm going to show you a video now of him at Ames Out. It's about 6 minutes long, and then I have a couple slides on what we can do about it. And I'll be concluding after that. So, okay, so hit the play button there, Santos. It's on. Oh, okay.
Anybody look read?
He's talking about Obama, right?
He does mention him. Yes.
He's the only one that can hear it.
Santos.
Are you working on it?
Well, yes.
Huh?
Better start over again.
Well, at least he doesn't get it going. Rick tells about his Italian family roots and his father and grandfather coming here from Italy. And because he makes it so personal with his family story, I think it's a very touching story, and he does it quite skillfully. But I guess we're not going to have it, right?
He's working feverish.
No pressure.
Okay.
No pressure.
Red, yellow, and blue.
Okay. What I think I'm going to do is go ahead with the sort of towards the conclusion. If he gets it going, he gets it going. So it takes a little pressure off him up there, okay? So what can we do about it? Because Rick's going to do a great motivational thing here, but what can we do about it? We need to harness the power of the Tea Party, and we have to recognize that the demographic race to political power is our #1 challenge, because we're not convincing our native-born Americans fast enough to catch on, because we have so many, this tremendous tsunami of people coming to this country with a socialist bent, the socialist values. They are overwhelming our ability to make headway with our own native-born Americans. So we are in a race, really, a power race, a political power race. And we have to recognize we're not going to get anything done on Obamacare, on Common Core, or any of these things unless we stop, or at least reduce legal immigration, as well as illegal immigration, of course. But you have to put the cart before the horse. I would suggest looking at ways to focus meetings on activity planning, not passive education on diverse topics. It's not traditional for tea parties, but I've been a citizen journalist and gone to a lot of tea parties, and it seems like there's a lot of passive education going on, but not that much activism, and we're really running out of time. If you look at what's happening with those trade pacts and other immigration legislation, we're running out of time to make a change in this huge tsunami that's coming to our shores. So we need to really focus in on immigration and start looking at ways to reduce it. And one of the key ways is supporting bills that change our chain migration, the family reunification, extended family reunification. If we just pass that one bill that's before the House, I think it's 604 or something like that, that would make a huge difference for us. Huge difference. Because it would be only the nuclear families coming in rather than all these huge extended networks. And maybe evaluate our success on how much community political activities occur rather than the number of passive attendees to meetings, because we're not getting anything done with passive attendance. So don't give just lip service to this issue. Please join Numbers USA. It's free. Go on their website. Sign up for their alerts. They give you an alert saying the TAA bill the trade bill is coming up. It's going to help promote the Trade Promotion Authority and the trade bills. That's critical to our future, and that will, if those bills pass, we can probably see a lot more immigration into this country via the visa system, at least. It might also provide some cover for Obama to do more amnesties if these trade bills pass. So anyway, what Numbers USA does is it sends you the alert saying, this is the bill that's coming up before Congress. These are the key points to make with your congressional office. Here's the telephone number. Call. Or here's the fax. We wrote the fax out for you. Do you agree with it? Send it. Then send it. Send it in your name. That has been the most effective system I've seen in my 20 years of being in immigration stuff. Numbers USA. So please get on there, and if you have a few extra bucks, send it along to them. But just being one of their callers or emailers really does help, not even faxers. And it's all free. The Federation for Americans for Immigration Reform has the same system, and Californians for Population Stabilization. I use them for California issues, like we just passed free Obamacare for illegals in the state. I tried hard to stop that. Didn't work. We the People Rising is a group in Southern California that is very active in embarrassing legislators that cater to illegals. And so they get in the media a lot, even as far as Great Britain. So they cause quite a ruckus. And of course, for research, there's a Center for Immigration Studies. So did we figure out
Yes, we're good.
the sound? Okay, great. Okay. So we need you to do more than just lip service. At least, please, 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 get on the Numbers USA system. It's great, it's free, it's fast, and we need your help. So here's Rick Santorum. We'll end with that, and I hope you enjoy it.
We have to communicate with where people are in America, and that's what we'll do. But we have to also face the reality that what's hurting American workers, maybe more than anything else if you're an unskilled worker in America, is a huge amount of immigration that's going on in this country. And I'm not just talking about illegal immigration. Yes, we've seen 12, 15 million illegal immigrants here who are competing in primarily unskilled jobs. But in the last 14 years since 2000, there have been more people who have come to this country legally than any 14-year period in American history. And that includes the Great Wave. And historically in America, what we've done every time we've had huge waves of immigration, they've been waves. And what happens to waves? Well, they come in, and then they go out. They provide a respite. They provide a respite for a lot of reasons, for labor markets to adjust. One of the reasons that we see labor markets in such distress and wages not going anywhere is because there's a flood of labor coming in. And we have the Democratic Party who doesn't care. They say they care about the workers, but they don't. You know what they care about? They care about bringing as many people in to get as many of their votes as possible. That's what they care about. They care about power, and this is a way to power. And unfortunately, on our side, on the Republican side, we have the business community who sees labor as a commodity. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't see people as a commodity. I see people as individuals and valuable people whose wages should not be depressed to keep profits high by having people come into this country to keep wages down. So we need a policy that puts Americans first. An American immigration policy that says no to amnesty, that says yes to securing the border, and that says that we need to dial back on chain immigration in this country, which is resulting in over 1 million people a year coming here to suppress our labor markets. It's a very simple formula, and it's not against anything. I'm the son of an immigrant, and I'll give you the experience of my father. He was one of the guys caught the wave. My grandfather came at the end of the Great Wave in 1923. In 1921 and 1924, they passed 2 immigration laws that shut down immigration. After 1924, immigration was about 100,000 a year. It's now over 1 million a year in America today. It was 100,000 a year, and so my father was in Italy, and my grandfather was in America. For 7 years it took for him to wait so he could see his dad. You can say, well, we shouldn't do that to people. Well, my dad would always say, America was worth the wait. It's worth doing it the right way, because it was right for America to take a pause and to make sure that Americans were looked after first, so when he came, he had the opportunities that the American dream will give to all of your children. This, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, is a message that Republicans can stand up and proudly talk of as a conservative message, but it's a unifying message. I just went for the last 15 minutes and didn't mention Barack Obama.
Wasn't that good? Isn't that a good one? Yeah, that's great. Okay, questions? Oh, okay. People can come up here to ask questions. You can come up. They want you up at the... or I can come to you.
I'd like to ask the question, okay, you're talking about this fair trade thing. Okay, according to what I heard last night, Pelosi put a hole in it, which Obama got caught blindsided. But not only that, a lot of EU countries are totally against it. And Japan sent a communique, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that they can't do it. There's just no way.
Japan can?
Japan cannot.
Okay.
Yeah, that was something that was mentioned. I think this fair trade is going to go into the depths of the ocean. I don't think it's going to come to pass.
Comment? Okay. Right now, as far as I know, I didn't check today's news. So if anyone knows today's news, as of over the weekend, the bill that they absolutely had to pass for the trade was the TAA bill. And that was the one that Democrats really shut down. Okay? They didn't, well, both parties. It was a big slap against Obama. So they had to pass 2 parts in order for the trade promotion plan to go forward. And 2 parts are TAA and TPA. You can get all confused with all these acronyms, and I was on Friday, and I've gotten this straightened out. The TAA is stalled right now, but the rumor is that they're going to bring it up for a vote tomorrow. Okay, so I've called my congressman, McClintock, who did vote against TAA, but he voted for TPA, which is the other half, the Trade Promotion Authority, to give President Obama the go-ahead to fast-track it. Okay, but they need to pass both of those. So one is stalled and one has been passed. So I'm mad at McClintock, contrary to what I said. Where is Paul? Paul here? Okay. I'm sorry. I had it wrong on Friday on the radio, but this is the correct version, unless you're going to correct me. So anyway, it's stalled temporarily until the tomorrow's vote, and we definitely want to get hold of our representatives and say no on TAA, and that's the giving an allowance to workers that are displaced. Anything to stop this trade bill would be good. I don't want to go into all the details. Yeah?
There was a time when people would say we had never, at that time, lost a war or won a trade agreement. Would this trade agreement be any different?
I will admit that I've been studying immigration and not trade agreements. This is the first trade agreement that has had such a huge component of immigration in it. So I am a trade neophyte. So I can't really address your question real well as far as how we have done so well or not on previous ones. I've seen data anywhere between 60,000 jobs lost, which seems very tiny, up to 600,000, 700,000 jobs lost with NAFTA. But I don't study that, so it's not really an expertise area. So you have to make up your own mind. But I've made up my mind on these trade agreements because there is a secret 10-page chapter in the TISA section of it, another acronym, and that is a whole chapter that will completely allow Obama to do some very bad things as far as dramatically increasing visas and possibly do an amnesty here. Yes?
I have an opinion on fundamentals. It surrounds the idea of comprehensive anything. Think about the comprehensive immigration reform plans we've heard about the last few years. They are so complex, they're impossible. Why not break it down into simple things, like controlling the border? When the basement's filling with water, first shut off the water. And it seems to me like this trade thing has become so comprehensive, it's not understandable to probably half the Congress. Let's do these things one at a time, step by step. Perhaps some real progress could result.
That's too much common sense for Congress. No way is that going to happen, but I applaud your comment there. Yes, no. Break it down, yes. Obamacare, we could add that to the list. That was a comprehensive sort of approach, too. We know how well that turned out, huh? Yes, you might want to hear, I'll go out there. Yeah.
I like Dr. Rand Paul very much. Could you talk, he's 90% constitutional. Why is it that he's not mentioned as one that the members liked?
How many Republican candidates for president do we have? Something like a dozen?
6, I think it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. If I had... Numbers USA has evaluated them all on immigration, okay? And only immigration. So you talk about Constitution, right? But they only look at immigration. And I think he's somewhere in the C's. He has a C grade, maybe C minus. He has advocated for amnesty, and that goes against, they have to go on their commentary. And also, with Rand Paul, also his legislative history. But he's in that middle pack, the worst of the worst, I think. The most dangerous are Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush. I don't think Jeb Bush has a chance, but maybe. He has all the money. So, to me, those are the three most dangerous on immigration. Rand Paul's in the middle pack, with Scott Walker. Huh? No, I don't trust the libertarians. But whatever, that's my personal... Well, yeah, he could be 100% constitutional, but that doesn't mean that he would enforce... Well, yeah, he should enforce the laws, but... Yeah, well, I'm a little skeptical there. Yeah.
How do you factor in the 50-some million Americans that have been murdered in the last 40 years into the immigration deal? And we have the baby boomers heading for retirement, and they need the money they need the tax base. So what's your thoughts on the 50 million that have been murdered?
Murdered just in general, or you're talking about illegal aliens?
No, Americans that have been murdered.
Americans been murdered, just anyone off the street, okay.
No, in the womb.
Oh, okay, okay. Woo, I was having, okay. Yeah, okay, now, okay, now I'm starting, okay, so, what was the question? Okay, Americans, I don't know how it figures in. All they do is figure out what, they do projections based on our present population, not what could have been our population. Okay? That's all they can do. So, sorry, I'm not really answering your question, but it's tough. Yeah.
Okay, my question is on the people in war-torn countries, Iraq, Iran, Syria. There's talk and some articles about thousands and thousands of refugees who will be coming here. Has that been,
Asylees.
yeah, has that been considered in the data that you look at?
No, not in the data, because I'm using, I'm using different studies, but most of them are from 2014, most of them, and that's just now happening. Yeah, they're starting to, I think they're starting to bring them now, so yeah, no, that's not in the data.
Do you have any
I have concerns.
Yeah, do you have knowledge of what their plan is on bringing them in? Just anybody? Is there going to be any?
They probably will, they probably have their networks in the major cities that accept refugees and just plug them into the current programs for refugee programs. And you have to realize during the past 30 years, they've been really watering down the refugee criteria. You know, as I said on Paul's radio, that now you practically have to just stub your toe and you're considered a refugee. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just another excuse to bring more people in. Although there could be very genuine reasons too, but as what's been happening historically over the past 2 decades, 3 decades, they've been watering it down. No, they'll just plug them into they have networks. The churches usually make a lot of money off of it. Yeah, the Catholic Church, the Lutherans are huge on that. They have a whole network for Somalis up in Minnesota. Anything else? Yeah.
Anyway, so population growth, how does that factor in? Because as we see in Europe, especially in France, negative population growth has influenced greatly their immigration policies and increasing. And there's whole enclaves of Paris where the police don't even go into because of exactly what you said. They're isolated.
Same in this country, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's parts of LA that, police aren't going, Flint, Michigan, right.
And so how does that factor in? Because real population decline almost necessitates immigration.
Okay. You have pros and cons of both, because you see what's happening in Europe right now. It's becoming Eurabia. So, yes, they are going through a population decline because their native-born women are not producing like they did, 30, 40, 50 years ago. But then when you bring in a lot of these groups, it causes very major havoc and a very serious national security risk. So, look at what happened with the Paris riots. That went on for weeks and weeks and months, if not months. I mean, and Norway, little Norway's having major problems. So, I'm not so sure that a declining population is always a catastrophic situation, because you can look at what is alternative in Europe. They're ahead of us at least 10, 15 years, and they're becoming Eurabia. So I don't want this to be Ameriaba? I don't know how to say it. But we have, the Muslims in this country are very fast producing, and it's really changing Michigan politics. There's been over 50 cases in the United States that were won for, where they put Sharia law ahead of constitutional law. And that is really scary stuff. So I really can't see a huge, given the two scenarios, I think I would prefer a shrinking population to a totally transforming one like what Europe is showing us right now. But that's for each of us to make up our own mind on that. Okay, that's enough. I'm sure you guys have other things to do and talk about. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.